Coming to you live from deep within a windy, radioactive wasteland, we are the survivors of the social justice zombie apocalypse, the few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the zombie hordes.
The zombie whores.
Zombie whores with Rantzerker number 70. Reasonable questions for anti-social justice warriors. As always, I am your host, Allison. I am joined by Karen, who will no doubt endeavor to rub her e-peen all over this.
Well, and all over all of you guys, too.
Yes, and we also have Brian, Doge in charge, and special guest Teal'dir. Hello, Teal'dir.
Hello.
Shall we get in?
There we go, chat. I said something. Now I can have silence for the next 15 minutes. It'll be great.
I especially want to rub my e-peen all over Teal'dir's antlers.
Okay.
There is no finer trophy.
There's no finer trophy.
Maybe we can do an antler version of the rusty trombone.
Okay.
So, chat, if you would like to draw that fan fiction,
it's already done, Teal'dir. That sound,
of course
the sound is the sound of a pencil moving at the speed of light. It's already being exchanged on Y Gallery or whatever horrific hole of artistic plus sploosh is.
Oh, yeah, I know. I even managed to gross myself out there. So
you can call it an e-pencil or an e-pencil.
Okay. All right. All right. I know everybody always complains if we extend the intros.
Well, you do realize that the word pencil comes from the word penis, right?
Mm-hmm.
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 Okay. Did anyone ever explain why?
The more you know. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay, all right.
Because phallus.
Really well, because you can write things with both of them. You
know,
and now paper, your name in the snow. It's all good.
And now we understand how women are victims of pencils.
Oh, that's right. Absolutely.
Yep.
And pens.
Oh, yeah.
And pens, which I assume is also
especially ballpoint.
Yes.
So is this why feminists prefer writing all of their signs in crayons?
Or menstrual blood?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're trying to find new ways. All right, so moving on.
Topic just not allowed, Allison, so...
Let me set this up.
Okay, all right, yeah.
So, this video is entitled Reasonable Questions for Anti-SJWs. It's been making the rounds. I'm sure you've seen it because everyone's making response videos to it. So let's see if we can find some way to make it a little bit more fun. Partly because we're doing it live.
And also because, misogyny this fine takes time.
Yes.
To unwind.
I know that Mike already pointed this out, but I'm sad that we didn't make the cut in this sequence here.
No, and also, Hannah would have punned much better than myself, but she's not here.
Punnage.
Punnage, yes. Okay. Are we starting?
Yeah, do you not see it? Do I need to?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, good.
All right, so this is just silence in the beginning, which is very
no.
annoying.
There's music. It's like this cheesy syntho bass stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like to up the suspense. It's like suspense music or like sci-fi suspense music, or like kind of resembles the music that is playing right at the start of the original The Thing, right? Kind of build up some kind of.
Because I'm guessing that anti-social justice warriors have acid for blood and were originally some sort of alien bioweapon.
That's pretty much my story. What about you?
Or either that or we absorb and assimilate other life forms.
Yes, I guess that would explain it. All right.
So they make the claim that this is better than BuzzFeed. That's a really low bar, guys.
These are actually the reasonable questions, right?
Really
these are the reasonable questions.
The reasonable ones.
That SJWs have for anti-SJWs.
Yeah, these are the best ones they could come up with. Just bear that in mind. The best ones they could come up with.
Are you able to understand the irony of responding to the perceived political correctness of the left with exasperated reactionary hypersensitivity of your own?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, but see, here's the fundamental difference. Here's the fundamental difference between the reactions, is that political correctness, right, is a reactionary response to things that offend, that need to be silenced, right? So the argument for political correctness is that people need to be silenced, and the reaction of people who are against that, yes, it is hypersensitive, and rightly so, I think, because they're arguing that no one be silenced.
Yeah. And this is interesting as framed. This is called Reasonable Questions for Anti-Social Justice Warriors, and right off the bat, the first thing that they're charging us with is being sort of prissy.
Well, and just as unreasonable as they are.
Well,
Right?
that's sort of
right, which basically means that they're aware of how unreasonable they are.
Except we don't want to actually silence them. We're not going into any government bodies and saying, hey, there's this place where there's too much freedom of speech. We got to get on that and stop it. Like, you can say we are histrionic or hysterical or prim or prissy or thin-skinned and high-strung as you want, but we're not using that as an excuse to say nobody can talk that we don't approve of.
Like, it's kind of the equivalent of the argument that I had with you remember those pesky dames way back when, like 3 years ago, when Snake Plisskenist was doing videos and all of that, right?
Oh, Snake.
Yeah, I know, I miss him. But okay, so you remember, like I remember being in the comment section on one of their videos, like. In the video, she claimed that comments in the comment section were shouting her down. And it's like, how does that even... Your video's still up. You're essentially speaking uninterrupted. This is not like you have a bunch of people banging desks and yelling in a bullhorn and singing the freaking Soviet, like, Communist Internationale or whatever the fuck it's called, while you're trying to give a speech. No, these are people expressing themselves in the comments. You cannot say that they are shouting you down, right? They're not. Anybody can go to your video and watch it in its entirety without interruption, listen to every point you make, agree or disagree. They don't even have to look at the comments. The comments are not shouting you down, right? But then they would actually, then you have Alice McLaughlin, who's a freaking professor of philosophy or some shit at the University of Ottawa or Ryerson or somewhere, on the agenda with Steve Paikin, opposite Janice Fiamengo, discussing just such a disruption during one of Janice's talks, right, where there were people who shut the entire thing down, right? And she's saying, well, these are people who are just engaging in freedom of expression. People shout Janice Fiamengo down during a paid speaking engagement that somebody rented the room in order for her to be able to do this. That's just people engaging in their own free expression.
Okay, so essentially the entire content of this so-called reasonable argument is you're thin-skinned. That's why you need to be censored.
More specifically, you're as thin-skinned as we are.
Okay.
So, Teal Deer, do you want to say anything to us, or shall we move on to the next? Teal Deer, do you want to say anything to that first question?
Can I just answer it the same way Christy Winters answers comments? Not an argument poisoning the well fallacy, not an argument straw man fallacy.
Citation needed!
Yeah, it's so funny. I gave her a list of citations when she did that. She never responded after that, rather unsurprisingly.
You know,
you fucking pseudo-intellectual hack that she is. But yeah, this guy's question is fucking retarded, and the reason is it's like, oh, do you realize that you're just having a reactionary position? It's like, well, no. What you've already done here is you've done something which all of you, or the good majority of these people do throughout this video, or one person I remember in particular, you've instantly called the position that people on the anti-social justice side have as all being reactionary. It's not. If you want to sort of look at it, that's basically saying, like, all you guys want to do, it's the 1950s argument again. It's you want to take everything backwards in time until this point. No, I have yet to meet anyone in this particular sphere here who really wants time to roll backwards. It seems to be, no, we kind of want things to move forwards to a point of actual equality between people, allowing for merit, and that's pretty much it. And this is the funny thing that I love about these social justice types as well. It's they seem to have this mentality of progress for the sake of progress, and I've made this point to several of them by now. It's, you will always live to be called a reactionary or conservative or right-wing or whatever it is by your children, because you're going to get things to a point where you think nothing needs to be changed, and then someone's going to come along and they're going to throw all of these slurs at you, and then you're going to go, well, hang on, that doesn't apply because everything's perfect, or, because we don't need to change things. And then you'll know just why people laugh at you when you do that shit now.
I wanna know. Okay, so when they say reactionary, they mean that we're reacting to something, right? So they are.
No, I think when they say it, they're trying to tie it to the right-wing pejorative slur. Because that's what they do. I don't think they're just meaning you're being reactionary as in you're reacting to something, because you can react to something in a left-wing manner which would not make you reactionary. They're trying to tie it specifically to the right-leaning traditionalist version of the term reactionary, which is why they're completely wrong out the gate.
I don't understand how being a reactionary is a slur. I mean, my anti-feminism is my reaction to the reality of feminism.
Yeah, that's
feminism was a reaction to, the ubiquity of patriarchal norms, right? Like, we're all reacting. Anybody who takes any kind of action against something that exists is reacting. They are being reactionary. Like, I don't.
That's the point. This is why it's stupid, because it's a word that has two. You can react to something in the way that is progressive, that would change something, or you can react to something in the reactionary way of wanting to drag things back to how it was. They just default to the, your right-wing conservative want to take everything backwards, because that's their go-to insult, because they think that anyone who doesn't agree with their progressive agenda must necessarily want to either keep things as it is or roll it back, as opposed to just say, or we can go forward on the other fork of the road, or on one of these other hundreds of forks. We don't have to follow yours.
Well,
there's lots of ways forward.
And the other thing is that we're not necessarily reactionary unless you consider wanting to go back to due process and freedom of speech is reactionary.
Well, it is.
I think they would say that.
Okay, but Karen, before we continue, we should get another 30 seconds in, because we're 15 minutes in at this pace. This will be... We will be having to leave to go to New York by the time we're done.
There's lots of great questions, and I'm sure that we can certainly bring it back around.
This one was pretty shit, so let's...
Yeah. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. Most of the questions are shit. This next one, I think, is really bad. It's actually kind of pointless. So we'll move on from there, but here we go.
What is it with you people and skulls?
Skulls are cool. Let's move on.
How do you define right-wing? Anti-SJWs often have an aversion to being labelled as right-wing, yet they regularly defend the right and bash the left. Therefore, why is being labelled right-wing a bad thing to you? And
okay, alright, could you smug fuck. Okay, alright. Sorry, I apologize for calling you a fuck. Or smug.
No, he is smug. There's a lot of smugness in this video.
Smug. We defend the right to speak, and we attack the left for taking it away. Do you understand the conception there? It doesn't mean we agree with what the right has to say. It means that we believe they should have the right to say it.
Yeah, and right now, it is the political right that seems to be most in support of freedom of expression, free marketplace of ideas, all of those things. And the left seems to be very, very much in line with, yes, let's censor the internet. Yes, let's, police people's speech. Let's get people fired for wrongthink, and let's even put some poor fucking teenage kid in jail for calling a policeman's horse gay, right? Let's do all of that because
you call the horse gay.
Yeah, no, and a policeman's horse, no less. I mean, not a smart move on the part of that kid, but I don't think he went to jail. He was arrested. in the UK.
Okay, all right, continue with your again.
For calling a policeman's horse gay. A police officer's horse. Sorry, officer's horse. I didn't want to be politically incorrect and say policeman. But essentially, we will say we're not right-wing if we're not right-wing. There are lots of anti-SJWs and anti-feminists who are right-wing and who proudly say they are. Milo Yiannopoulos is one of them, right? That doesn't mean Sargon is, right? So you are using right-wing as a pejorative, number one, when I don't feel that it is or should be. Number two, you're accusing all anti-SJWs of being right-wing when it's simply a factually incorrect statement or assertion to make, right? Whenever somebody's wrong about something, regardless of whether I feel insulted by it or personally slandered by it or not, I will attempt to correct them. I would not find it insulting to be called right-wing. My parents are right-wing. I'm as shade to the right of center on lots of issues, right? And to the left of center on lots of other issues. It to be an insult, but I will correct you when you say something that's blatantly untrue.
Okay.
Shall we? Unless Tildir wants to speak.
Tildir.
Yeah, unless Tildir wants to say.
Yeah, why is mislabeling you considered a bad thing? Well, you've answered your own question. Why is calling someone something that they're not wrong? Well, the answer is in the question, fuck nugget.
Okay.
And it's just... What was the other point I wanted to make? There are people here who are right-wing, there are people here who are not. People don't like being called what they're not, and it's the fact that SJWs use the whole, oh, you're just right-wing. I mean, it's funny, you've watched it as it's proceeded through time. It used to be, you're conservative, then it was, you're right-wing, then it was, you're a reactionary, then it was, you're a neo-reactionary, now it's, you're alt-right. It's just an evolution of the same term that you use to dismiss people's arguments for no other reason than the fact that you don't want to actually answer it, you want to play the identity politics game, and pro-fucking-tip SJWs, you don't have to belong to a group in order to defend that group.
Yep.
Yeah, well, the other thing that occurred is they want a handy label for everybody who disagrees with them.
Yeah,
even
so they can
disagrees with
dismiss
their
you.
methods. Yeah, so they can just dismiss you. Okay.
All right, moving
Brian.
on.
Right-wing a bad thing to you? And if it's because right-wing is used as a pejorative, can you not see how labeling people as SJWs or regressives is also pejorative?
Okay. You chose the term social justice warrior.
Well, they chose to embrace it, I think. I don't know where it came from, but I thought the first time I ever heard it was when Internet Aristocrat was describing these regressive leftists. He called them social justice warriors. And it was intended to be a pejorative because SJWs are not exclusively left-leaning people. Then not all left-leaning people are exclusively social justice warriors. The thing that differentiates SJWs from other people is that SJWs try to censor, they're authoritative, they're smug, they think they're better than everyone, or authoritarian, rather, yes. They want to control the discourse, and they are emotional babies. That's the difference.
Well, I think he used the term warrior. I mean, social justice is an actual term. I mean, you can take courses in university on social justice, right? And so this is essentially, when you look at the entire body of feminism and Black Lives Matter and all of these social movements, including men's rights, okay, you could perceive them all as movements for social justice, okay? That is essentially what each of them, at least in their own minds, are trying to accomplish, is some form of social justice, some form of equality, some form of fairness, some form of, just a fair and just society. That would be social justice. And I thought that he used warrior as a pejorative in the same way keyboard warrior.
Right. Yeah.
That these, and Mike Rue did lots of good material on this, that social justice warriors immediately, picked up arms, and it shows like hands typing on a keyboard, right? And and did battle, right? And because it really is to sort of see yourself as, yes, the pen is mightier than the sword. There's value in talking and discussing these things and changing people's minds and stuff like that. But so much of this sort of you have these people who are essentially crybabies, who are attacking people through their words and then going to the government and saying, or YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, and saying, you need to stop people from disagreeing with me because it hurts my feelings. And so I think that's maybe why he chose the word warrior.
Okay, can I just point something out? You've just completely destroyed your own argument, because being called the regressive left is making a distinction between the regressive left and other people who are on the left. So the point is not that you're on the left, it's that you're regressive, that you're engaging in a regressive action. So if you're being called regressive left, it's not because of your leftist politics, it's because of your authoritarian politics. And I think we should... Tildir, did you have anything to add to this?
No, just the fact that there's a sweet irony that when they get called regressives, it's kind of, in some ways, the same as them calling other people reactionary. It's both an accusation of both sides wanting to take things backwards, which, on the anti-side is not actually something that happens because there's so many camps in it, but on the social justice side, it's actually very visible that they want things to go back because they are pro, or certain elements of it is pro things like segregation.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's...
All right.
Rather than telling people you disagree with to drink bleach, wouldn't it be more productive for you to have an actual conversation about the issues you feel matter? Or is it just easier to do the bleach thing?
What?
Please look up The Joke is 10 Feet Above Your Head.
He's responding to people who say things like drink bleach, or who themselves would like to drink bleach to be relieved of this mortal coil so they don't have to deal with the social justice warrior bullshit. But what I would add is, if you are responding to people who are telling you to drink bleach, and you think that those people and those comments represent the anti-SJW side, you are being dishonest. You have not actually looked at places like, Honey Badger Radio, who are actually discussing issues. Instead of that, you're just saying that there are people who are trolling on the internet, and those people represent whatever your opponents are. You're being dishonest.
This is their argument throughout so much of it, though. It's like, I look at your comment section. Yeah, and? Are you going to talk about the people who are actually producing the content, the people who are actually addressing the studies, the people who are actually addressing the issues? No, it's, I noticed your Twitter feed and your comment section. Why aren't you policing people? This is typical of the people then producing the content. No, it isn't. You intellectually dishonest hack.
Okay, and I can't help but notice that I have yet... I mean, we're admittedly, we're only like 1/14th in, but... I have yet to hear a reasonable argument.
Yeah. Guess what?
Maybe.
Well, but they're not making arguments, Allison. They're asking questions. So these are reasonable. So tone policing is a reasonable question.
These are the most reasonable questions that these intellectuals were able to find to make this video, by the way.
Well,
just a reminder.
Okay. So I would suggest, right, because most of the people on our side are essentially saying people should be free to say what they want, and if they want to troll, go ahead and troll, go ahead and shitpost, go ahead and whatever, use your dank memes, all of that, right? Most of the people on our side are like, yeah, no, that's fine.
Or your dank peens.
Yeah, it might be annoying, right? And it's often annoying when it's done to us, but okay, the solution is don't feed the trolls, and they'll eventually get bored and go away, right? Whereas your side is engaged in an attempt to police the internet, tone police the internet, to eliminate trolls, to punish them, to get rid of them, to essentially make anything that is like even remotely similar to I need to drink bleach, or I need to bleach my eyes, or anything like that, any kind of drive-by insulting comment, right? That's going to be actionable. That's going to get your account suspended. That's going to, maybe even land you in a courtroom if you are in the UK or somewhere where the First Amendment, where freedom of speech is not as vigorously defended as it is in the United States, right? So it's a completely different fucking thing, right? I don't have to answer for trolls. I choose when I do my videos, right? I take the position that what is below the line is not my responsibility. What other people say is not my responsibility. What they say on my videos or what they say elsewhere after they watch my videos is not my responsibility. I do not have any control over them. I do not want control over them. You guys are the ones who want control. So you guys are the ones who should have to be held to a higher standard in terms of policing people on your side, like Clementine Ford, right, who's notorious for accusing men of having little dicks and accusing men of being, virgins, and accusing and saying really, really horrible drive-by insulting things that anybody would describe as trolling to people over Twitter, right? You are the ones arguing to tone police the internet. You deal with your fucking house first. We're not arguing to tone police you or Clementine Ford or anyone.
Yay! Let's go on.
All right. So here we go. The big man himself.
Oh, shit.
Moriarty.
You claim to be proponents of rational, logical, evidence-based argumentation. That's great. That's entirely laudable. But when I look at your online activity, when I look at, for example, your Twitter feed, that's often not what I see. How do you reconcile this claim to be evidence-based and rational and logical against stuff like, oh, I was just trolling you, oh, I was just shitposting, or TLDR?
What?
You fucking what, mate? You want to fucking throw down, do you?
No, seriously. Why do they have to be
characters? You cannot write an academic thesis in 140 characters. You well know this. People do not have to be switched on and engaged at all times. That fucking simple. One joke that you make does not invalidate your entire life's work or the entirety of another point that you have made somewhere else.
Okay,
That's fucking simple.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
One other thing, Philip. You claim to be he's supposed to be one of these super rational, smart guys that everyone respects and looks up to. And you know that there's content out there that anti-SJWs have made. You can find it all over YouTube very easily, and you know who your opponents are. And you have not made one attempt. You have not made one attempt to look it up. That's why you're on here saying, but Twitter though. But people's be mean on Twitter though. Why is it you all's letting them talks like that? I'm a smart guy. My people's not mean.
I got into it with him.
Okay, go ahead, Karen.
I got into it with him because essentially, Christy Winters had demanded, or feminists had demanded of, Thunderfoot, essentially, why would there be inequalities of outcome if not for, social conditioning and socially constructed norms and things like that. So why would inequality of outcome exist in a world where everything else was equal? And Thunderfoot said, well, sexual dimorphism, right? And this is a absolutely 100% scientifically verified thing that exists. Sexual dimorphism, including dimorphism in personality and personality traits and interests and propensities and all kinds of things that are universal across cultures, including matriarchal cultures, right? In terms of men's and women's personalities and preferences, okay? So sexual dimorphism exists in aggregate across populations, right? Which will affect outcomes. Now, Thunderfoot didn't say this was what was responsible for the entirety of the difference in outcome. He's answering the question, if not for social forces, what else could possibly explain a difference in outcome? Well, sexual dimorphism, right? He made no claim as to how much of the difference was due to sexual dimorphism. He made no claim whatsoever in that regard. It's just, here's another explanation, okay, as to why there's a difference in outcomes. Christy Winters has repeatedly said, well, we're not denying, and you can go to Noel Plum's videos on her, we're not denying that there's different biological differences, but if 51% or 52% of the population is women, then why wouldn't there be 52% representation of women in Congress, right? Like, why? Like, she's literally arguing out of both sides of her mouth, saying, yes, sexual dimorphism exists, but if everything else was equal, it would have no effect, right? And Moriarty, I got into it with him over this thing with Thunderfoot, right, in a long comment section, and he essentially told me, right, that if I could not narrow down to within a scientific certainty how much of the disparity in outcome is due to sexual dimorphism, what percentage of the disparity is, which is impossible when you are talking about social forces that differ from culture to culture and all of those things, right? Oh, and may play out differently in different fields, different areas of life. Okay, you cannot narrow it down to exactly 60% of the difference in outcomes on this particular date, right? Within a margin of error, that's 95% correct 19 times out of 20, right? Okay, you cannot do that, right? He said, if I can't do that, if I can't put a number that's that certain on how big how big a role sexual dimorphism plays in these differences and outcomes, then he would have to assume that it was all social.
What?
Okay, all right. Can I just point something out? Maybe the reason why there are more male politicians is the same reason why in a mental sense, is there are more people who are male who have successfully climbed Mount Everest. Because it's freaking dangerous. There's risk. There's uncertain outcome. And one of the factors of testosterone is that it tends to make men more calm in the face of uncertainty.
It's probably a connection to the reason why there are so many men that are homeless as well. Because some risks don't pay off.
Yeah. And it's like, and the other thing with this it has to be, you have to have this incredible rigor. Well, every single culture on this planet has had or conscripts men. There is no culture that conscripts women and doesn't conscript men. So it's like I think it's 100% across the board, unless you're talking about cultures that don't even have laws, in which case you can't have a law about conscription. So it's invariable regardless of what the cultural difference is, unless he's alleging there are cultures that, I don't know, alien cultures. What? Within their biology how could that be explained by culture?
Well, I had this this old bag of cheese that I was going to put on my omelet, and then I looked inside and I found a culture. All right, shall we continue?
Yes.
Okay.
But I was just absolutely blown away by his double standard that he's going to hold me to a level.
Apparently not. We shall not continue. No, let's continue. I know it's ridiculous. It's only about shutting down argument. Yeah. So all these questions have been about. It's about shutting down argument, not encouraging it.
Absolutely. Spoilers. The thing is, I did throw the cheese out.
Research to be done. That's the point. It's like you can say it's like, well, we don't know what the percentage is yet, but because we have universal examples here, the inference is that it can be biology. We've got lots of evidence that suggests this thing. We're probably never going to know how much it is on a grand scale, but the point is, these guys want to shut down the conversation about it so that the research never gets done about it.
Yeah.
In Moriarty's world, where it's like, well, I have to conclude that it's entirely cultural. It's like, well, no, you don't. You can just leave it as a grey number.
That's like saying if you can't state it. Isn't that sort of like an argument that creationists make too? Was if you can't prove without a shadow of a doubt the evolution as a fact, then I'm just going to have to go along with the The devil made you do it.
It's like you can't prove me wrong, therefore I'm right. It's like, well, no, you can have that position and it's a valid position to have. I'm going to have mine, but we can just work towards finding out which one is more correct. We don't know how much necessarily of the grand scheme of things, like why men are represented in that. We know that some of it's cultural, of course it is. And this is another fucking thing which I love when social justice warriors say to people like me who, you know, when you go on the biopsychology or evolutionary psychology thing, they're like, oh, so you're saying culture has no impact? No, of course it does, you fucking moron. We know that culture is informed by biology. Absolutely, culture has impacts. But in every situation, we're not going to know exactly how much of a ratio is going to be biology and exactly how much is going to be cultural. The point is that we have to be able and willing to analyze both. But to state that, like, biology is not a thing of it and that it's purely cultural, you've basically just said, well, I don't think any research needs to be done to work out how much of this behavior is biology influenced or a part of a manifestation of your biology. You've just shut it all down. Well, Stop shutting it down.
Well, what frustrates me too about that argument is that the argument that culture is separate from biology is absolutely fucking retarded, because culture is created by people, and people are biological organisms with propensities and.
If you don't have the biological faculties to be a social animal, you can't have a society. The ability for an animal to be social is informed entirely by the faculties of biology that they have. They have to be able to have a large enough brain to be able to work out basic things such as, well, they have to be able to first of all have things like an olfactory capacity and a memory capacity to deal with things like family recognition so that they don't inbreed. They have to be able to have basic emotional recognition for some degree. I mean, even ants and things like that, they don't necessarily recognize emotions, but they have a basic olfactory sense to be able to work out which ant is in their tribe and which ant is not. You take that up to mammals, they have to not only have that, they have to have facial recognition, they have to have some sort of sense of bonding, they have to have, on top of that, you have to have a sense of sort of jealousy and territoriality to some degree to ensure that you know who your in-group is and where your in-group lies and who and what is an out-group. If you lack these biological faculties, you cannot be a social animal, so you cannot have a society. Without your biology, you cannot be a social animal. You could cut bits out of a person's brain and turn them into a non-social animal, hypothetically. It's way off course, but...
No, it's good. And the thing is that what the hypocrisy of this, and I think we should probably move on after I get this out. The hypocrisy of this reminds me of something that I've been wrestling with in the past few weeks after being called an Islam apologist for defending Arab men, and really defending all men against the charge of oppression. Nobody wants, like, in our society, you can't actually defend men against this charge of oppression, charge of patriarchy, because if you do, then you are guilty of the defense of men. You can't even mount the argument, irrespective of guilt or innocence. It's like the situation, you don't know which is it social, is it biological? They just want to shut down the entire argument. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter if men are guilty we should have the argument. And it's perfectly legitimate and valid to mount a defense in that context and say, this is my evidence. This is my evidence of innocence. What's your evidence of guilt? This is my evidence of biology. What's your evidence of social of this all being social? And let's look at the evidence. But it's all about shutting down the argument before it even begins. And that suggests to me that these people may be covering for very weak arguments.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's... and I brought that up, and I'm sorry.
Nope, it's fair. Moving on.
Seriously, what is it with you people and skulls?
Skulls are cool. Do you have a problem with skulls? You seem to have a problem with skulls.
You know, okay, like there's literally a few skulls. Okay, so we got Davis Arini, and he's got a shaved head, and he's probably just trying to conceal male pattern baldness and still try and look cool.
That's what I would do.
You got Mundane Matt with his skull, okay, that he came up with early on, like right from the beginning. I think he was using a skull.
I love how that image is 2 years old.
Yeah, he doesn't look. His skull isn't like that anymore.
Yeah, it's a little chibi thing now.
Yeah.
You got Bane 666, right?
Who these guys probably don't even know exists.
Yeah, who makes excellent videos SJWs. Go watch Bane's videos because they're very, 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 very full of facts and good arguments. who just essentially uses the Jonestown kind of thing with the skull in the jug of Kool-Aid. I don't.
Well,
are there any others?
That's literally those three.
The only other one is the Ralph retort. He has a skull with a crown, and I know he's well known, and I think that's because they're going to bring up Ralph later on, and that's basically it.
We're not going to get to later on if we
continue. Actually, if he wanted to be more accurate, he would say, "What's with you guys and animals or anime avatars or something?" But
we're adorable. I think
we are
the anti-fems that he doesn't want to, the anti-social justice warriors he doesn't want to recognize exist.
Yeah. Okay. All right, moving on.
Are you aware that the ridiculous buzzwords you helped to popularize, like SJW and cuck and regressive, have all lost whatever meaning they once had, and only serve now as casual insults and pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation?
Oh yeah, you know what? No, I got it.
Alt-right, neo-reactionary, rapist, rape apologist,
racist, sexist, homophobe, transphobe, ableist. Go on, Alex.
All of these words that you use as pejoratives to shut down arguments. Fuck you, Mike. You're a cunt.
Okay, all right. Also, he looks like I don't know. That entire ensemble.
I think he's wearing a toga.
But it looks like an American flag disguised as a toga, or some kind of flag.
It's a little 70s porn sort of going on there. But okay, all right. I just want to say this. Everything you say, we coin, and personally I don't use regressive cuck, or I do use social justice warrior because I thought that you guys decided you want to call yourself that. But anyway, is actually the terms that we use refer to behaviors or aspects of belief systems. What you use and overuse and have rendered meaningless, you've just sort of stretched it until you just stretched it till it's this shapeless mass, are things that were once very important and useful. Now, I'm not so sure about misogynist, but misogynist, there are genuine woman haters. Rapist, you see the difference here? These are words that you have made meaningless through overuse, and they are needed words. You've glommed onto these words and you've turned them into nothing. A rape apologist, like you've turned these words, which should keep a definite meaning and have use in calling out people who definitely engage in these unpleasant activities. You've appropriated these words and turned them into meaningless slush. Like you've used misogyny so much nobody can really use it in a meaningful way anymore, where it does have actual meaning. Because there are actual misogynist practices. There are actual misogynist men. You have turned it, and women, and you have turned that word into a meaningless non-word, a buzzword for your political ends. And you've appropriated words that we sort of needed to keep people's behavior in check. And you used them. You smeared them all over the political landscape for your own fucked up ends. And you wasted them. Congratulations. And you are blaming us or the people who are involved in our sphere for correctly identifying shitty behavior and giving it a label. Regressive is not the same as rapist or misogynist. It's somebody who's engaging in a political activism to take away other people's rights. Okay? That is needed. And I don't think it has been diluted, personally. Because
I just found a whole bunch more people that I should probably be labeling this label, because I never heard of these people before, but now I know what they are. Are you done?
But okay. If we wear out regressive, we still got authoritarian, totalitarian. We still got tyrant. We still got anti-Western principles of justice. We still got the whole force of what that word actually means. And it's directed at you because you are engaging in the behavior. But when you call us rapists, rape apologists, and misogynists, you are actually completely making those words meaningless because we are not. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
And besides...
At the very least, that question was to quote, right? It was essentially, and I know I am. Oh, I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah.
Right? oh yeah, I know you are, but what am I? Infinity, right? And that's all it is, right? Is they're saying, okay, well, you do this thing that we also do. That's the heaviest charge they can levy at us. Is you do the same thing we do? Aren't you bad people?
Yeah, and the thing is that we are apparently overusing a word like regressive. Well, you're overusing words like woman hater and rapist. Well, if you use those words into complete irrelevancy, you're going to create a much bigger problem than if we overuse the word regressive. Did you understand the disparity there? It's like the original thing where they were charging us with being thin-skinned. Well, even if we are prim school marms, you know, wearing the whole librarian fetish thing and tapping our sticks whenever somebody gets a little feisty, whatever. If that's what we are, at least we're not silencing people. But that's what you are, and you're also silencing people. So again, another disparity in outcome here. Okay, I'm done.
Just a reminder. These are the best questions these people were able to come up with. The most reasonable questions. All right.
Okay.
Moving on.
All right.
Pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation.
For the last time, what is it with you people and
committing actual literal felonies?
What?
Okay. So
the side that brought you Hannibal the Victor, the known paedophile who was
Sarah Nyberg
with Anita Sarkeesian,
Allison Rapp,
Sarah Nyberg, all of these people, all of these convicted child rapists, and who was the Atheism Plus guy who just got done for sexually harassing women?
Oh yeah,
while he was that guy as well. Yeah, if you want to point at the Ralph retort and be all like, "Hey, you guys,
this guy got drunk once,"
named half a dozen.
Okay, here's another one. Kyle Payne from a few years ago, right? He was convicted of molesting a passed out co-ed at a party and taking pictures of it. Okay. This is a guy, a feminist, okay, whose job it was to give consent seminars on university campuses. How about Hugo Schweitzer? Right? Mm-hmm. A guy who
attempted murder,
drugged out of his mind in a mental institution after his breakdown, right? Came out on Twitter and announced to everybody that, I've taken a lot of drugs and I'm feeling very talkative right now. And I just want to let you all know that I was not qualified to teach women's studies. I have no idea what feminism is. I didn't take any kind of courses in university that would qualify me to teach it. But, I volunteered to do it because it would give me access to hot young fucking co-eds to bang across my office desk.
Okay. Karen. All right. Let me point this out. Okay. If Ralph was hassled by or arrested by cops for being ornery, right?
Ralph got
for being passed out. He was passed out in a hotel lobby drunk. The cops woke him up, and when they woke him up, I don't know whether he knew what he was doing or not, or whether he felt like he was being attacked or what, but he resisted arrest and he assaulted cops. It had nothing to do with his political opinions. He was just drunk in a fucking hotel lobby. The cops woke him up and he woke up swinging.
All right. Okay, can I point something out? Up to that point, I think most people in the community regarded Ralph as being unhinged.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, and we actually called him out on a lot of his unhingedness. Like, for fuck's sake, he tried to goad Paulo into committing suicide when Paulo was having his emotional difficulties. I remember that stream. I think I have a screenshot, or somebody shared a screenshot of Ralph actually telling Paulo to go be an hero. And I'm like, what? I don't know if you guys remember Paulo.
Yeah, no, Paolo. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and it's like, this guy is Ralph. He is a muckraker. And he's been, like, there's been lots of people in the community who've been like, yeah, this guy's slightly unhinged, and he doesn't do anything positive. So you find a member of the community, and nobody's saying that what Ralph did was good, or defending it. He deserved to go to jail if he did for doing that. There's no defense of that. Nope. And also, I'm not surprised he did it, because when I when I saw him goading Paulo in a very fragile emotional state into suicide, I'm like, what the? This guy's a fucking fuck. Like, this is the person you're gonna hold up, and you're only holding up Ralph as an emblem of our culture, group, or whatever the hell we are, that are a loose agglomeration of individuals. You're only holding him up as a paragon because he ended up fucking screwing the pooch really bad.
Yeah,
it's the only reason.
He shit the bed, and it's like, okay, so
he shit the bed multiple times before this.
The number of articles that I've read from the Ralph retort, right, is probably, like, I can count them on one hand, right, that I have ever read. The number of times I have ever even been on his website to read any of his articles, I can count on one hand, right? He's never interested me. He was essentially part of the Gamergate thing. I was much more interested in the actual discourse on Gamergate rather than just muckraking and essentially drama and smearing and stuff like that. And that seemed to have been, and some of the news that I read there was quite juicy, right? And, and it was just like, the irony of so-and-so doing such and such, right? Yeah, okay. But he essentially ran a Gamergate gossip rag, right? That's all he did, was just run he didn't have, like, he was about posting gossip and sometimes, like, news, just little snippets, like the Associated Press of Gamergate, right? With not a whole lot of opinion added. And, so I guess sometimes you could go there and you could find out what was happening, right? Just in the factual sense of X, Y, and Z happened. But I his opinions, like, I was not completely uninterested in them, and it's because he didn't seem that bright to me.
Yeah,
like,
but
I have no idea about all of this other shit, right, that you're talking about, Allison, because I never followed the fucking guy.
Well, I didn't really follow him either. It's just that I noticed him on a stream with Paulo because I had a long conversations with Paulo before Paulo was having those emotional difficulties that he was having. And I just noticed Ralph was there. And I don't want to say it wasn't Ralph because it seems like his style. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I only call him a fucking fuck because he goaded someone who was obviously in mental distress or emotional distress into suicide. Mm-hmm. And also I know him. I know of his stream where he broke down crying and shit. Well, Ralph did or something. And the guy was seriously messed up. In fact, we should probably just leave him alone.
Well,
to be honest.
I just want to add in one more thing. Despite everything else, this is how you know that we're dealing with collectivists, because they think that the actions of one, especially when it works to their advantage, is reflective of the entire group. We have one example of one person whose views not everyone agrees with, and definitely not 100% if they don't outright oppose him on many, many things, who got drunk and disorderly and attacked a cop, served his time, and nobody defended him. No one made a video saying that it's not fair, or that, he just identifies as a drunk, violent man and he should be allowed to have that identity or anything like that. Nobody defended him. Nobody stood up for him. And that's the one thing that this guy could bring up to say, this is all of you, is this one incident of this one man that did this one thing one time, and he's somebody that not even everyone likes. And he only represents himself at the end of the day, because we see people as individuals for the most part. If they do something, that's on them. That doesn't mean that what they do reflects on us as a collective, because we don't see ourselves as a collective. Meanwhile, they have Allison Rapp, Hannibal the Victor, Sarah Nyberg, the girl, the feminist who wrote that book called The Beautiful Boy, the woman who tried
Germaine Greer.
Yeah, Germaine Greer, the woman who tried to kill Andy Warhol. Yeah, all these other people that have done things.
You know what?
And are celebrated.
And not only do they not distance themselves from these people, but they actually try to protect these people.
Because the other thing is this: would Ralph be what did Gamergate or Anti-Social Justice Warrior? Do you think that his beliefs or his engagement in the community or I think he was more feeding off of the community. Do you think that if he didn't have that, do you think he wouldn't have ended up getting arrested for drunk and disorderly?
That's what I was saying, is that this entire incident has nothing to do with his politics.
It's nothing to do with his politics. Whereas thinking
this isn't like if Mike Huckabee was caught freaking sticking his dick in a gay freaking glory hole, right? This is
nothing to do with his politics. And the other thing is this: Eve Ensler's her promotion of lesbian pedophile rape was part of her politics. Jermaine Greer's promotion of objectifying underage boys was part of her politics, and the defense of all of those people was part of the politics of social justice war.
Robin Morgan picketed for the release of Valerie Solanas. Robin Morgan was at that time the chief editor of Ms. Magazine. She was one of the most prominent feminists of her day, right? And after Valerie Solanas shot
Andy Warhol,
and
the epitome of patriarchy,
I believe she also shot Mario Amaya and attempted to shoot Fred Ward, but the gun jammed because
Rima Williams. Okay, no, I'm kidding.
Because for some fucked up fucking reason, she thought she had signed away all of her rights to Maurice, all of the rights to her future work to Maurice Girodia, her publisher, when in reality she just didn't understand contract law. And when he wasn't at his office, she was just, well, I'm going to go kill some other guys who have wronged me by, I don't know, refusing to produce my play, which is so obscene that it would have put Andy Warhol in prison, okay, if he had actually produced this play. She went and she shot these men because she was angry at men, right? And you had T. Grace Atkinson, a prominent feminist, and Florence Kennedy, a prominent feminist, and Robin Morgan, a prominent feminist, all hailing her as, a champion of women's rights, the first great spokeswoman for women's rights, for feminism, picketing for her release from prison, right? All of these things, right? And supporting her in her actions, right? Before anybody even knew why she'd done it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
okay.
You know what? I think we need to move on.
Yeah, I think we need to move on.
Unless Tealdare has something to add to all of this wrath.
Go on.
No, okay. The crux of what I was trying to say is, I think there's a big difference between being drunk and taking a swing at a cop and being a pedophile. I thought you guys didn't like cops. Yes. Anyway, moving on.
Like, you might want to work on that.
How would we work on that?
Talk was so rational when he was fantasizing about beating up women with dyed hair, but then he assaulted a police officer, and finally I was convinced.
What the fuck? Did Ralph say that?
Maybe. Who cares?
No idea.
Again, he's one guy. He doesn't represent shit. So.
Oh my god.
All right, Christy Winters.
That one guy was smug. This is actually just a wave.
This whole thing is like thick with smug. It's viscous smug.
Viscous smug. Okay.
In videos and in the comment sections, anti-feminists often take up the most extreme or the
often is a weasel word, but I'm moving on.
The weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is. Instead, why not take up...
I got...
Let me finish let her finish the question.
Okay.
All right, let me go back a little bit.
But that was a...
She's forming an entire question that's built on her what is probably a false construct.
Or the weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is. Instead, why not take up the strongest, most robust feminist argument you can find and really challenge yourself?
Okay, number one.
No, Karen.
No one singular feminist position. There are a million feminisms, okay? Every single woman has her own definition of feminism. I know this because that's what I was told by Naomi Wolf. There are a million different feminisms. And therefore, essentially saying, why do you take the most, argue against the most extreme? Well, would you rather I argue against feminists who are reasonable and rational, like Christina Hoff Sommers? Would you rather I do that and ignore all of the Julie Bindels and the fucking Mary Dailies of the world? Is that what you want?
Karen, if you can't refute every single one of those 1 million feminisms, then we'll just have to go along with we'll just have to basically validate the entire thing. Isn't that the way that it works? If you can't,
kind of thing.
You got to put a number on it. Otherwise, the opposite is true.
We have to assume it's 100% the other way.
Okay. I have taken on the strongest feminist argument, because the strongest feminist argument for a lack of women's rights applies to the Middle East. And I have argued the counterprosto of that, or counter whatever, of that particular argument. And I do it even though feminists don't even do it. Like, feminists just run away, or they just pretend, they just hand wave. They don't even bother to use their strongest argument. That is your strongest argument. And in fact, if you actually cared about women's rights, women's civil rights, because verifiably women are disenfranchised in the Middle East, you would have no political profile in the West. You would simply be funneling money into organizations fighting for civil rights for women in areas where they don't there's no question that they don't have equal rights. That's what you would be doing. That is your strongest argument, and you don't even use it.
Teal dear.
I'm just go ahead.
Yeah, well, as Karen's already said, and something that Christie should be very well aware of, feminism is not a monolith. Therefore, taking on individual feminists over their individual positions is the very best way of approaching them. Because that way you're not treating feminism as a monolith, which is one of the other criticisms that SJWs give to people who oppose feminism and oppose social justice. It's always feminism is not a monolith, so stop treating it like that. So you can't win either way. If you address them as individuals, well, then you're not addressing the real feminists. If you do address it as a monolith, well, then feminism isn't a monolith. So, okay, Christie, which feminism is the proper feminism? Since you are apparently the Pope of feminism this week, what is feminism's strongest position? Is it this one? Feminist PhD candidate in her dissertation, science is sexist because it's not subjective. And an actual quote from her dissertation, women and minorities cannot understand logic or objective truths, so science classes must stop using the scientific method. Is that the feminist position that I need to destroy because it's the strongest and bestest one? What about from Tor here? Are STEM syllabi gendered? A feminist critical discourse analysis. One which actually then makes the point that yes, STEM syllabi are gendered and therefore we need to have women's studies versions of science. Is that the strongest one? Because again, women are incapable of understanding things in the same way that men are, so we need to change the entire subject to suit them so that it doesn't use the scientific method and so science becomes subjective. Are these the strong feminist positions that you want us to demonstrate why they're stupid? Which ones would you want to pick? I have a funny feeling that the strong feminist positions she wants people to go for are hers, because she thinks that hers are impenetrable. As soon as you offer criticism of her, she just sort of says, she just shouts a fallacy, either says citation needed, shouts not an argument, or just names an informal logical fallacy as if that's an internet I win button, because she's a pseudo-intellectual hack.
Okay, but what is she really asking here? She's asking that we argue against the moderates. That we literally argue against someone that we might even agree with simply for identifying as feminist. Okay? Like, we argue, we take the best argument of any feminist whatsoever on any given position. So, say we have a feminist like Christina Hoff Sommers who says, the wage gap as it's normally presented, as being determined, caused by systemic sexism on the part of employers and paying women unequally for equal work and all of those things it's being misrepresented. It's really an earnings gap, and it's really due to this, that, and the other, and blah 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 blah. Right? Okay. And maybe there are some cultural reasons why women gravitate towards less well compensated work. maybe there are cultural reasons why, and that's a question that we need to ask, and that's something that we need to investigate. But, okay, she wants us to argue against that even though we agree with it, right? And she doesn't want us to argue against Obama when he says that, it's a travesty that in 2012, women are still
paid 77
on
cents
a man's dollar for the exact same work. That hurts men, it hurts women, it hurts families, right? We're not supposed to argue against that, right? Even though that position is the majority feminist position. It is their worst argument, okay? But it is their majority position, as far as I can tell. If Obama's using it, because
can I point something out?
There's nobody in the White House, nobody on Obama's staff, right, who can Google.
All right, can I point something out? Any feminist position that's strong would be our position.
Mm-hmm.
Any feminist argument that was worth its weight, we would get behind.
Agreed. That's exactly the point I'm making.
The only strong feminist argument.
People we agree with.
The only strong feminist arguments I've ever seen are my own. And Christina Hoffsummer, some feminists, but we agree with them. So why would we argue against what we agree with? Because if they were strong, they would be well-reasoned. They would have empirical science behind. They would have science behind them, or at least a decent theory that's consistent with our observations of human nature. Like this, we would agree with them. Why would we argue with them?
Oh, because if you agree with them, but you're not calling yourself a feminist, then you're not doing it right. Because Christy Winters is addicted to the label. Because you have to. That's her thinking. These are feminist positions. The fact that she calls these reasonable positions feminist positions tells you that they have to be called feminist because feminists have to maintain the label. They have to own it, and it has to remain relevant for all eternity. Otherwise, Christy Winters is nobody.
Okay, well, here's the thing.
Nobody.
Okay, when somebody like Christy Winters comes onto a debate with Sargon of Akkad, and in her opening statements where she demanded that all of the citations that were ever going to be used, all of the information that was going to be presented by either party in the entire course of this debate, which is completely unreasonable. Okay, opening statements, yes, but the rest of the debate, it's unworkable. But it all needed to be cited, it all needed to be sourced, and she sourced an article on a mainstream media article by a feminist that was decrying the fact that in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Supreme Court has just decided that orally raping a woman who's passed out from drugs or alcohol is not a crime in Oklahoma. Okay, and she repeated that statement. It is not a crime in Oklahoma to do this. Okay, now you look at the statutes. That entire decision by the Supreme Court was that the prosecutor prosecuted that crime under the wrong statute. The prosecutor decided to charge the defendant with forcible sodomy, and force has a very specific definition under Oklahoma law, and there was a perfectly good statute called sexual battery that he could have charged that crime with that is punishable by up to 10 years in prison, but he chose not to. He chose to want the judges to write the law, which is illegal. It is not part of the American system. It is improper for judges to write law. Okay? But that is what the prosecutor essentially demanded that the judge do in wanting a guilty verdict based on this particular statute that he charged the defendant under. Now, this does not mean that orally raping a woman who's passed out from drugs and alcohol is not a crime in Oklahoma. Right? And I have asked her over and over and over and over and over again to address this. Every time I see her commenting somewhere with the quote, citation needed, I ask her about this, right? Could you please? And she disappears from the fucking conversation, right?
Okay,
and I'm sorry, but I think what you are asking is that I not address your fucking bad argument. Right? I address the arguments of the people that I agree with, who might call themselves feminists. That's what this looks like.
Yeah, it's retarded. It's like a Heisenberg's argument. Any argument that we can refute is we're not being fair to feminism because we're just using the weak arguments. Well, sorry, they're all weak. Let's move on.
All right, we're moving on.
Yes, like
I am deeply concerned with male addiction rates, suicide rates, and abuse rates because I have worked with these issues in the quote-unquote real world. Would you be willing as anti-feminists to put aside your differences with feminists for the greater good of addressing these issues, especially as the kind of solutions needed are not necessarily gendered? And if so, I would actually like you to let me know, because I'm not fucking around or presenting any gotchas here. I actually really think that we could get something done if we work together. So,
okay,
yeah.
well, is she done?
I thought she was. It's like these pauses.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, she is done. I'm gonna go back so we're not looking at Steve shots.
Because feminists control most of the funding for mental health services and domestic violence, and all of this other stuff. We have to. She's essentially saying we need to work within or with them. Well, look. I would work with anyone who is willing to set aside their ideology to help men. However, feminism, and all feminism apparently, because I've never found a feminist who says they don't, has found men as a collective guilty of the crime of oppression and patriarchy. You've decided that men are guilty of these things. There's not been a trial. There hasn't been. They haven't gone to court and they haven't had a defense. They're just guilty. And when you create services for men, you create them in that context. And if you're a feminist who's not going to talk to men about how suicide is toxic masculinity, how being raped in a prison is actually misogyny, how even though they are victims of domestic violence, they are beneficiaries of male privilege. If you're willing to give men services without extorting compliance to the narrative that they are criminal, that you adhere to, unless you don't, which do you? Are you a feminist who says that men aren't guilty of the crime of felony oppression or privilege or patriarchy? Like if you're one of those feminists, please speak up, and you can exempt yourself from this condemnation. But if you are, what my concern is when you put on these services for men, that you are not victimizing them even more than the original victimization by forcing them to agree to your narrative of that they are criminal before you even help them. So that's what I have to say about that.
I would say too that to ask men's advocates to work with feminists within the framework that feminists have constructed using taxpayer dollars and millions or billions of dollars in private donations, based on Duluth, based on the assumption that women are 95% of rape victims and men are 98% of rapists and things like that, right? They've built a huge industry essentially based on this sort of male culpability in terms of, and they see men who are abuse victims, men who are rape victims as exceptions. And particularly if they were victims of abuse by women or rape by women, they are like extreme exceptions. They are, and so they're not going to tailor. She says many of the solutions are not gendered, but the services are gendered. Okay? This is the problem. You can't say, well, come work with feminists in our gendered services to provide ungendered solutions to men who are victims. Yeah, no, ungender your services.
Okay, and this is what I would say to her. Sure, I'll help you fix up people who have been shot. I'll help you heal gunshot wounds if you put the fucking gun down.
Okay.
Okay.
An easy answer to this. You, as a feminist who wants to help men with all of this stuff, will you be willing to reinstate or to instate someone like, I don't know, Erin Pitsey in your organizations to manage your DV shelters and things like that?
Yep.
Since she started them and she was forced out by feminists because she dared to claim that women can be violent and men can be victims, for which she was ostracized from her career and had to flee the country because of threats to her. Would you be willing to allow Erin Pitsey to actually pick up where she was forced to leave off. Even though, like, her methods and books have been basically demonstrated to be by far the best approach of dealing with these things. Would you be willing to throw out the Duluth model and all the feminist theory and go back to working with her?
I don't think
I'm just going to say no.
I don't think so, because you know what? White Ribbon Australia just forced her through a lawsuit to hand over the whiteribbon.org domain name to White Ribbon Australia. They sued her. She raised enough money to present a meaningful legal defense, but she lost the case. Now White Ribbon Australia, a feminist organization, owns the domain name whiteribbon.org, and her new website, it's the exact same website, but it's under a new domain name. I forget what the domain name is. I can probably provide it later. But yeah, no, feminists are not willing to work with her. They're not.
This is like the people who were pro-segregation of schools saying to the civil rights movement, well, why don't you help us educate black people or black children in the segregationist schools? But no, on a fundamental level, your principles are completely against the nature of, they're completely against human rights. On a fundamental level, what is this person's name anyway?
Christiosity.
Christiosity. On a fundamental level, you have determined that men are guilty, that they are guilty without ever having given them a trial or offered them a defense. On a fundamental level, your beliefs deny men's human rights. So no! If you were a feminist who said, oh no, it's okay, we can both decide on what equality is, and I'm not going to presume for myself the right to define equality and say I'm fighting for it, conflict of interest much, but we can decide what equality is. If you're a feminist who said, you know what, it is not fair that feminism has declared men guilty without giving them a fair trial and a proper defense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're that kind of feminist, sure. But then again, you would have to be working with us to dismantle all of the shit that came out of declaring men guilty without even a fucking trial. The Duluth model, for example. The continued support for mother custody. You know, all of this stuff you can tie directly to feminism finding men guilty in the court of public opinion of patriarchy, of male privilege, finding them guilty without ever offering them a defense, without even considering that men should have a defense. All of that came out of that. And you can't just waltz through the door, and forget that you are part of a group that did that. If feminism didn't exist, this wouldn't exist. And yes, I know there are aspects of feminism that takes off on older gynocentrism, like the victimhood, the damseling, all of that shit. But you can definitely lay the charge of fucking felony oppression on feminism's fucking feet. And you can point at that.
Patriarchies always saw men as rulers and servants to women. They ruled over women and they served women. And feminism came along and erased that second half of that thing. Right, so they essentially have taken a social contract that involved male rule, male guardianship, male custodians of society, male dominance. Right, that was like women and children first in the lifeboats, and they've essentially said that, you know, that entire fucking thing was men first in the lifeboats, women and children go down with the ship, right? They have not acknowledged the servant aspect of male identity within patriarchal cultures. They have only ever acknowledged the ruler aspect, the dominance aspect of it, right? And so what you are left with is a paradigm, an intellectual and a philosophical paradigm that, you know, essentially says that sexism is exactly like racism, and somehow, even though at no point in history did any white supremacist ever say blacks and children first in the lifeboats, right? That was how men treated women all through history, was like they're black slaves, like whites treated black slaves, like aristocrat, actually, like aristocrats treated serfs, like, you know, like Islamists treated infidels, right? That's what they have defined the entire relationship as, right? This is a smear on the character of men throughout history that just is so objectionable to me.
But it's not even just that it's a smear and that men are not guilty. It's that we have never realized that they deserved a defense. Period. It's like that.
Well, why would they? They're the rulers. They're in charge of everything. Why would they need anybody to stand up on their behalf and say?
Oh, okay, all right. Tildir is asking for a banana. Tildir is asking for a banana.
All right,
and
all
he's
right.
probably right because I think we're at 3 minutes. And
Yeah.
It's 14.
The one thing I wanted to also throw in there that I was waiting to say before we continued is Chrisiosity. How were you made aware of these issues that men have? Was it men's rights activists that talked about it before you decided? And how long after they started talking about it did you decide that it was something that you wanted to pursue within the lens of feminism? Don't you think, therefore, that because we're having these discussions and people like feminists who have been just sort of dismissing us for as long as they have no choice but to acknowledge it? If it wasn't for us, you wouldn't be talking about this. Am I right about that? I'm just going to put that question out there. Because I don't think you knew that these things existed. It's not a gotcha. No. It's a question, for real. Did you know about these men's issues before MRAs were talking about these men's issues? Before you, when you decided that you really wanted to be a part of the solution, although through the feminist lens, did you know that these problems existed before we mentioned them? All right, moving on.
Yeah. So, yeah.
What is third wave feminism?
Garbage.
Because I've often heard you folks insist that you have no objection to feminism in general. It's specifically third wave.
Well,
Karen!
Here's where you know. Here's where you know he hasn't watched a single one of my fucking videos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me finish Steve Shiv's question.
You have a quarrel with. So what is third wave feminism specifically? And what specifically about third wave feminism do you have such a problem with?
It's the same garbage as first and second wave feminism. It is the advocacy for increasing women's privilege without increasing their obligations. It is the advocacy for giving women all of the rights and entitlements of men while maintaining all of the obligations and responsibilities of men. That is what it is. That is what all feminism has always been.
Feminism is the belief that men are guilty. Without trial. There's never been a trial. And you have never allowed a proper defense. Feminism has never allowed a proper defense of men. Feminism is the belief that men are guilty of oppression, that they are guilty of privilege, that they are guilty of patriarchy. Feminism is that belief, and it is a belief that has never been tested in any kind of thing resembling a court. And feminism is also the belief it's also the belief that men don't deserve a defense. That men don't deserve a fundamental human right to being defended against accusations. And that their first and second and third wave feminism do not differ on this score. So there you go, Shives. That's the problem I have with feminism. Feminism strips men of their fundamental human right to a defense against allegations made against them.
All right, shall we move on?
Also, how's your wife, Steve? Is she still criticizing you for listening to sexist music?
Okay, maybe we'll give...
Tildir, do you want to say something to this?
For the glorious antlered rage.
I've criticized first and second wave feminism. I've pointed out that they have a very, very checkered past before. And Steve, the last time you asked me a question, it was about domestic violence rates between people. I offered you a 40-minute video. You blocked me on Twitter. Fuck you. You don't get any answers out of me.
All right.
When you're willing to talk and listen, Steve, I will answer you. Until that point, fuck off.
Why is it that this feminist represents all feminists, but this men's rights activist doesn't represent all men's rights activists?
Whoa, wait! Sexism all of a sudden? Ladies and men are different? So we're supposed to punch men and not hit ladies and open doors for men, but not ladies? Fuck you! Get out of my face, you tiny piece of shit!
Why?
Who is that man?
We don't know who that man is.
No one knows who he is. If you can demonstrate that he's a men's rights activist, go ahead, but no one actually knows who the fuck he is. This is a non-point. You found someone and just you've done the same thing that feminists always do. You found someone and just attached a label to them and been like, "Oh, that's Jim over there." No, it isn't. Fucking prove it.
Okay, well, and also, what is it that he's doing that's... I mean, he's obviously upset about something.
I don't know.
But he's not saying anything that's
context. Like, is it in a political context? I thought Trigglypuff was in a political context.
Yeah, but okay, like this guy's statements, right? You know, like, oh, so we're supposed to just, like, you know, women can hit men and men can't hit them back and blah 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 blah, right? Okay, now, yes, he's agitated, yes, he's upset. I don't know any context for what led up to this particular scene here.
I wonder, since he's talking about him not being allowed to hit women, did that woman, like, push him or hit him and he's just
I don't
retaliated and asking?
I have no idea what led up to this. And nothing that he's saying is particularly out of order. He's just very, very upset, right? Whereas Trigglypuff is a self-proclaimed feminist and fat activist, or whatever the fuck, body positivity, whatever you call it, okay? Anti-fat phobia activist and all of this stuff, right? That's what she is. She has a political identity. So, you know, that was researchable online, right? That's so her outburst there is, you know, she literally went into a speech that was given by her philosophical opponents so that she could have this outburst, right? And shout them down. She intentionally put herself in that situation because of her politics. This guy, I have no idea if he was just in line to get some fucking chicken from whatever fucking place he's in, at Tim Hortons, McDonald's.
Yeah, McDonald's.
Okay. And some fucking woman, you know, shoved him out of, you know, budged in line and shoved him out of the way, or what. Like, I have no context for this. I have no idea whether he's politically activated. I have no idea, you know, like, this is just an everyday situation of a guy who I have no idea.
Okay, well, let me give you another scenario. I mean, he's calling out an actual sexist situation. If Trigglypuff had been shoved to the ground by some guy and she was saying, "Yeah, this is not fair. I should be able to retaliate." I mean, there's a lot of context there that doesn't equal. I mean, I don't think anybody would have represented her as a feminist icon. We did it because she's a feminist, number one, because she went to protest a speech by her political opponents. This is random contextless something. We don't know what happened to this guy prior to him saying, "What is this sexism? Why should a woman be able to hit a man?" or whatever he said. Was he just hit? In which case, you're saying that a group that's everybody feels is okay to hit is protesting the fact that everyone feels it's okay that they are hit. That's, you know, a guy in a public space saying, "Why does she get to hit me and I don't get to hit back?" or "Why does she get to hit me, period?" And being upset about it. This is the worst you can bring up in regards to what you think men's rights activists are. A guy who is genuinely identified an injustice that he faces and is visibly agitated about it in the public. Yeah. Seriously.
In a situation that he didn't go out of his way to create. And that we don't even know if he's politically active. Like, does he belong to any men's rights groups?
Okay, so what should we find? I don't know.
I would love to find out who this guy is, because, you know,
yeah, we should probably.
Like,
yeah, give us some evidence of who he is. Otherwise, you're just making shit up, which is what they always do. It's like Elliot Rodger as an MRA. This guy's
Citation,
an MRA.
Please.
Anybody who basically you think that has done something vaguely similar to what you think in your straw creation head of what an MRA does is an MRA to you. So you're going to have to do better than this, basically.
He's just a random dude in the public who's identified the very problems that we talk about.
Yeah.
Well, that's because those problems exist in the public. And there's a lot of men who are actually aware that there is problems. So what have you proved with this? Nothing. Let's move on.
Okay.
Unless Teal'dir wants to say something.
Banana.
Face, you tiny piece of shit.
Why am I continually asked to answer for the views of feminists if I agree with feminism's overall aims, but don't agree much with those particular feminists? Does that mean that I can ask you to answer for anybody who labels themselves similarly to you, even if you don't agree much?
You just asked us to answer for people who aren't even labeled similarly to us, and we don't even know if they're labeled similarly to us. You've just asked us this question, reasonable questions for anti-social justice warriors. This is everything that isn't, oh, we do this and you do it too, has been these people who do not identify as anti-social justice warriors or men's rights activists or anything that we know of, but are vaguely related to you, where we can tie because they, I don't know, shared the same pool with you when you were 2. The most tenuous tie. Anybody who we can tie to you, you have to answer to. Answer for their behavior and their words. Not even their philosophy, just their behavior. Okay. What was the last 2 arguments here?
Why do you have to call yourself a feminist, dude? Why is that so important? If there clearly are feminists out there that have really bad ideas, and they're not these little fringe people that have blogs on Tumblr. They're in academia, they're in the media, they're in entertainment, they're on the news, they're in journalism, they're everywhere. And they're writing shit. They're writing books. They're going to speak at the UN. If we criticize those people, the prominent ones, I never heard of you before I saw this video. Why is it that you still act like those are not representative of the kind of whatever fucking flavor of feminism you have decided? Why do you need the label? If you care about women's rights and human rights, why do you need to call yourself a feminist in order to practice? I swear to God, sometimes I think these people want to be seen doing feminism by talking about it rather than actually just doing the actual act.
Because feminism isn't an act. There's no, like, what, okay, you look at the word feminism. What action is there?
No, it's a belief.
It's a belief system.
Yeah.
It's the belief, okay, feminism is the belief that feminism is a Marxist, it's a view of, it's a paradigm of gender relations that borrows heavily on Marxism, that places men in the position of the bourgeoisie and women in the position of the proletariat. And the act of feminism is advocating for women's rights based on that model. That is all it is.
It's like we both disagree with, like he's disagreeing with feminists that we disagree with, but he still wants to be a feminist, so we should probably like hold off on disagreeing with what? Dude, stop it. All right, moving on.
If SJWs are bad because they spend too much time whining and don't talk about...
Wait,
yeah, that was...
Did he say SJW?
SJWs.
SJWs. Super Jews?
Yeah, no, that was...
God.
That was...
Okay, let's start over. I'm going to go back a little bit. Let's continue.
And don't talk about real problems, then why aren't you talking about those problems instead of just whining about the other people over and over and over for
Wait. I want to finish. I want to let him finish the thing.
Karen, just let the thing run out and then talk, because the echo.
Years.
Shush.
I mean, in the scale of priorities, that's like...
Mute, Karen!
Even lower, right? You know, you've got the real problems, you've got the things that feminists worry about, and then you've got you going, how dare they? Just, how dare they have different priorities from me?
What?
Okay, you know, okay, I can't let this stand. Okay, in fucking Canada, we have feminists advocating for the removal of the normal criminal due process protections in cases of sexual assault. So we literally, Justice Robin Camp is under an inquiry, a national inquiry to see whether he deserves to keep his job on the bench, okay? Because he asked, in the context of hundreds of pages of transcripts, in a particular rape case, okay, and anybody can go to Diana Davison's video on this and see what this was all about, but he asked the complainant, why didn't you just keep your knees together? Now, the entire transcript the entirety of the transcript surrounding the context of those remarks was redacted. All right, it was not provided to the public. It was only provided under a Freedom of Information request by the Globe and Mail, right, to find out in what context Judge Kemp asked this question of the complainant, right? He asked it in the context of the complainant saying that her butt was dangling in a bathroom sink, and somehow the perpetrator's snake-like penis, okay, managed to find its way into her vagina while her butt was dangling inside a sink and her knees were forced together by sitting inside a sink, okay, and her ankles were also held together by her skinny jeans, which were pushed down around her ankles. Okay, so he was trying to visualize. He wasn't saying, why didn't you just not be such a big old slut? No, it was actually how
were the physics working out?
How were the mechanics of this working, right? And how on earth was this man's penis, this man's boa constrictor-like penis, how did it manage to find its way into your vagina through a sink bowl while your knees were forced together by a sink, right? By sitting in a sink and having your ankles bound by your skinny jeans, right? You essentially had, and he is called on the carpet for this. He is going to lose his job over this. He has been subjected to feminist retraining over this, and feminists in Canada have accused him of not following the law. However, also in the redacted portions of the transcript of this trial, the prosecutor who was pursuing this case advised him that 2 eyewitnesses who were there right up until a few minutes before the sex happened, their testimony to what they directly witnessed was hearsay. So she improperly instructed the judge as to what was hearsay and what was not. She improperly instructed the judge that the defendant had not proven that his story was true, right? And therefore that was not reason enough to acquit. She instructed the judge that even if the judge considered the defendant's story more credible than the complainant's story, this was still not a reason to acquit, right? She essentially instructed the judge that the entirety of the burden of proof was actually the opposite of what it actually is under the law, and that direct things that people have directly witnessed are hearsay because they involved the words of people that were, that went into those witnesses' ears rather than just, the actions of people that went into their eyes, right? So who is not following the law? And we have an entire fucking feminist establishment that is putting this judge on trial, right? After he apologized multiple times, he's been subjected to feminist retraining on the law, which means, burden of proof, not so important. And, due process, that's fucking inconvenient. And, listen and believe, okay? And that is apparently the way the law should operate, right? Now, this is what we have going on in Canada. From establishment feminists who have power, feminists who are able to demand national, federal inquiries into whether a judge should still be on the bench, right? Even after he's apologized, even after he has said he was wrong because that's the only thing that would save his job, right? And somehow, we're supposed to just complain about the issues without complaining about the feminists.
Just complain about the gun, not the person holding the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Feminists declared men guilty, and they have developed this entire apparatus of this, almost like this secondary court system, where they can just slice through their form of justice. They can enforce their form of tyranny on society through this secondary justice system that they have constructed, in which men get no defense. Not even the defense of fucking reality. This judge should not have been subject to the feminist inquisition. According to what you're revealing about the court transcripts, nothing in what he said was wrong. And yet he had to apologize just to keep his job because he upset feminists. Because he was upholding a man's due process.
He might still lose his job, right?
He might still lose his job. And this is because he was upholding a man's due process rights. And feminists don't fucking like that. Well, where do you think all of this damage towards men is coming from? Like, the woman who said, well, why don't you work with me to help men? Well, why do you think men are suicidal? Because they live in a society that's treating them like, I mean, it's beyond second-class citizens now. They live in a society that's treating their rights, their right to due process, like a privilege, like an unearned privilege, like something that's immoral. They're treating men's right to due process, men's right to a defense as being immoral. And they're systematically removing every judge from the legal system that will stand up to men's due process, to grant men their due process right through this feminist inquisition, this feminist court of public opinion that they control utterly. And yeah, the feminists are the fucking problem. You know, and I don't really give a shit about preserving the feelings of some woman who sits in a coffee shop and talks about feminism, talks about how men have oppressed her, but, you know, doesn't believe that men should necessarily lose their due process rights or their children, and doesn't believe that men who are suicidal shouldn't be forced to admit to toxic masculinity before getting help, or doesn't believe that men who are raped in prison it's actually a manifestation of misogyny. But she still does believe that men are guilty of oppression and should be punished, but not that much. I'm not going to preserve her fucking feelings and refuse to acknowledge what's going on. Feminists have created an inquisition.
Yeah, no, and it's not just Justice Camp that is on the line for this. I mean, the evidence that this particular case involved a false accusation on the part of the complainant is substantial. There is a reason why Justice Camp sided with the defense, right? Because the defendant's story was corroborated by 2 eyewitnesses, and there was just no way to see the complainant's story, her version of events, as credible, right? And it's not just Justice Camp on the line because this inquiry has been called, because he apparently bought into a rape myth that involved trying to figure out the mechanics of how the rape happened in a physical situation that seemed impossible to him, and probably was impossible. And the way he worded it, which is code in our culture, according to feminists, for, you know, why didn't you keep your knees together? Why were you such a big slut? Right? Okay. Because of the wording that he chose and the way they isolated that sentence fragment, right? To essentially pillory this judge, right? What we have is essentially a situation where the verdict has been appealed. The prosecution is going for a second run at it. This guy who spent 9 months in prison awaiting his trial, in jail, awaiting his trial, right, is now going to be tried again. He's now going to have to defend himself again against these charges, right? So it's not just Justice Camp, who's a victim here. It is the man who, you know, because the judge worded things a little insensitively when he was trying to figure out exactly what the complainant was actually asserting, right? Now this guy needs to go back to trial. Now this guy is again facing down a prison sentence and a rape conviction, right? Over something that is obviously a false accusation. So this is what we're seeing in Canada, right? And this asshole is like, oh, whining about feminists, you know, whining about feminists and not the real problems. Well, you know, sometimes the feminists are the problem.
Sometimes. Okay, Teal dear, I think we're gonna have to end at the hour because this is gonna be like a 2 or 3 parter.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we're gonna be here for another 8 hours. But Teal dear, did you have anything to add?
I can't even really remember what the hell he said. To me, it just sounds like, how dare you have different priorities to me, therefore you're wrong.
I don't understand what he said either.
I want to say something to it. So he basically says that first you have the real problems, whatever those are, which he puts in quotes. Then you have the things that feminists tend to complain about, which is sexual assault and racism. Well, part of their examples. And apparently that's considered whining. And then what we do, according to this guy, is we whine about number 2, which is feminists whining about number 1. So he says you're whining about number 2, which is not enough like number 1, which are real problems beyond things like sexist air conditioning and the ways in which, rational discussion is also sexist and irrational when it comes to social justice. No, that's not bullshit. That's a real article that was written by a real website. But what I would say then is, if we, in your mind, are complaining about other people who are not complaining about anything that's real, then are you in fact complaining about us, complaining about other people who are complaining about things that aren't real? Does that put you then 3 degrees apart from real problems and therefore at a greater or an even lower tier than us? And then by me pointing that out, would you then see this video and then think that I am 4 degrees under that because I'm complaining about you, complaining about us, complaining about people who are complaining about shit that's not real? I don't know. That's a rabbit hole that I'm like not really wanting to go. I'm the dude complaining about the dude that's complaining about not real problems. So we're going to move on because this guy is trying to say that what we're doing isn't important, even though Honey Badger Radio spends at least a couple of shows a week talking about real problems. You would know that if you watch them.
Priorities from me. Why can't they do what I do? Whine about whining forever for a living. That's healthy.
Why don't you seem as concerned with actual feminist theory in academia as you are with wrecking people for views?
Again, arguing as people who are if there was a group of people that made up the entire anti-SJW, I mean, if you looked at the whole thing, right? Every person who makes content and every person who writes tweets and everyone who posts on Facebook and writes blogs, that guy is making arguments against the lowest common denominator of people. The folks that are just on there saying, lol wrecked, you suck. So-and-so smashed you in this video. But he's actually not looking at the actual content where people look at the arguments and dismantle the actual arguments.
The problem is that if you're a feminist, you're adhering to a worldview. You're adhering to a shared worldview. Just like if you're, like if you are a Christian, right? You're adhering to a shared worldview, right? A shared paradigm of reality. And when you are an anti-Christian, I could come at Christianity from an anti-position, from the position of being an atheist, from the position of being an agnostic, from the position of being somebody who is spiritual but believes that organized religion is not okay, from the position like that it causes more harm than good. I could be coming at it against it from the position of being somebody who does not believe in the Christian God, but believes in the God of the Old Testament. I could be coming at it from the position of an Islamist and viewing Christianity as a religion of infidels. I could be coming at it from any number of positions that involve a worldview and a stated position on how the world works, right? When you are anti-something, I can be anti-Christian in any number of ways. That because I'm anti-feminist, that doesn't put me in the same fucking camp as Rush Limbaugh, right? In the same way as if I said I was a Christian would put me in the same camp as other Christians.
Does anybody else want to say anything to that last guy? Or do you think that what I was saying when I said he's responding to what I think are the lowest arguments, that's what I think he's doing. Yeah,
of course. He's looking either at comment sections or Twitter threads, or he's looking at people in the general anti-feminist domain who are more there as entertainers than actual researchers.
Mm-hmm.
The people who do just like, yeah, that was a stupid point, you're a fucking moron, just shut up, you absolute cunt, and then they keep going. Yeah, there are people who do that for entertainment, but hey, I've got videos on my channel where I do nothing but look at feminist academic studies and surveys. I've got a video where I actually look at the problems caused by the fact that social sciences have basically become an echo chamber with left-leaning liberals outnumbering right-leaning conservative people and even moderates massively, and how that actually affects the quality of research that they're doing. So I've addressed this, but again, I'm one of these people who I think they want to pretend doesn't exist or pretend that I do something other than that. Failing that, I'm just going to say Janice Fiamengo.
Yep.
Her entire channel does nothing but look at feminism in academia. Knock yourself out.
Yep. Or if you can't stomach the thought of having to look at other non-feminist content, Christina Hoff Sommers, Camille Paglia, look at their interviews, look at their work. All right. Anyway, Steve Shives again.
Since so many of you profess to be admirers of second-wave feminism as opposed to third-wave feminism, I thought
who's this? Who?
Actually, there are anti-social justice warriors. TJ, I'd imagine maybe Sargon. I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth.
I don't know. I don't know whether any of these individuals have actually said, I agree with second wave feminism. For the most part, I have heard people say that in the 60s and 70s, there were still inequalities that needed to be addressed, and feminism was part of addressing those inequalities, right? And I would agree. There were certain inequalities that needed to be addressed, and feminism was part of an attempt to address those inequalities, right? That life for men and women was not equal in the 1960s and 1970s. That there were still things that needed to be done, right? I don't know whether any of and there are some second wave feminists that I do admire, like Karen DeCrow, and Camille Paglia and Christina Hoff Sommers, and women who are mostly completely disavowed by the feminist movement at this point.
Erin Pitsey?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know whether she was ever a feminist. She might have dabbled in it a little bit, but then she saw their consciousness raising sessions and realized that it was kind of a cult and sort of
Warren
washed her
Farrell.
hands.
Well, moving on.
I think it's sort of the same.
Yeah, Warren Farrell.
Okay, so Teal Deer, do you have something to say to this particular part, or shall we continue?
Yeah, Steve, until you unblock me on Twitter, I'm not answering any of your questions. Fuck off.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, I just got a call before this stream happened, Steve. It's from a guy called Tyrone. He told me he's going to pick your wife up at 7, and you shouldn't bother staying up because she won't be back till the morning.
All
right, moving on.
Moving on.
It'd be interesting to ask which second-wave feminists, in particular,
Karen
do you
DeCrow.
appreciate?
Karen DeCrow.
Camille
Karen
Paglia,
Okay, we've
Karen
been through
DeCrow.
this. Karen, let's finish. Let's let him continue because we've already gone through which second wave feminists you like.
Which books written by second-wave feminists have you read and found interesting? Which second-wave feminist activists have you specifically admired as you formed the opinion that you like second-wave feminism, but you have no use for third-wave feminism?
Okay.
Okay. This question isn't actually addressed to us because I don't think we admire or like second-wave feminism.
But it seems like you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the straw man nerd that they have created. That when a girl goes into a comic shop and tries to buy a Spider-Man comic, and the nerd is there and he's like, "You don't really read Spider-Man. Tell me what happened in issue number 300 when Spider-Man was married to Mary Jane, and what was on page 10 of that book, and who was the illustrator, who was the writer." It's almost like he's doing this nerdy shit test thing where he's like, if you really like this wave of feminism, then you'll know these things. Otherwise, you're a fake second wave feminist loyalist or something.
Well, I'd say they don't really know second wave. If you actually like second wave feminism,
then you don't really know it.
In entirety, you don't know it.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't like. I don't like second wave feminism, but
let's at least get to 6 minutes before we call it a day.
Okay.
Yeah, we know you don't like second wave feminism, Karen.
Okay, but I will give a shout out to the late Karen DeCrow, the first lawyer who ever argued in favor of legal paternal surrender successfully in a court of law. She actually argued that if women have the unilateral right to reject the idea of becoming parents against their will, those women should not expect men to finance their decision to become mothers, right? And she got a man off, I think it was like Serpico. So yeah, like just Google that name. She got him out of having to pay child support for a woman who tricked him into getting her pregnant. And that decision was overturned on appeal. I will give her kudos for that. I will give her kudos for advocating for actual, genuine, real, sincere equality between men and women in terms of rights and responsibilities.
But the rest of the second wave, no.
Yeah, like
nothing.
The theoretical background again of the second wave.
They can lick Karen's asshole.
They can lick my butthole. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All
I got
right.
her to say it. No, let's
go.
move on.
You
wait, Steve, I just got a text. Apparently Tyrone's mate Jay Kwan is going to drop by as well. You cool with that, right?
Of course he is.
Just curious.
He's not sexist.
You do understand
but
that
does he
reading
get
the
to have-
title of a book or an article or watching
No,
the
don't be a
15
misogynist,
seconds-
Allison.
Oh my God, it's Porn Stash.
I'm trying
Man.
to go back to
Porn Stash Toga Man. But
American
he has a
Toga
cat.
Man.
He has a cat. That's cute.
Oh, stop! He does not get points for that. Can we play the video?
Okay, but okay, you can sort of tell from like his shoulders and his chest that he actually shaved them at one point.
Okay.
You do understand that reading the title of a book or an article or watching the first 15 seconds of a video is not going to give you a deep, nuanced understanding of what that book or article or video is about.
That being said, how can you...
Okay.
Wait, Karen, just let him finish.
Here is. No, he's not going to say anything more substantive than this. Okay, here is what I get to hear, and I have gotten to hear for the last 7 years from feminists. Oh my God, girl writes what? I can't stand her. I've never been able to sit through even more than a minute of one of her videos.
Oh yeah.
Plus, I get the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't
this
even
is
think
very
I don't
common.
even think they even watch my videos.
No, we go.
Also, the hilarity of this guy saying this shit. The only thing I do on my channel is go through articles and papers beginning to end. Fuck nugget.
It's what we do too.
Yeah,
In fact,
and what bothers me too is you literally have like Ashley, whatever her name was, recently, who went with Justin Dennis or whatever he's calling himself. She is calling herself now. On oh, I don't watch response videos, and oh, I don't make response videos, and blah blah blah. Right? Yeah, no, they don't watch the response videos, right? And or Ashley does, Justin doesn't. But they
do the opposite of what I do. When I get insults, I ignore the insults and find the arguments.
Yeah, look at it this way, okay? Anti-feminists have a habit, okay, of making response videos where we respond point by point by point by point by point to the entirety of the video, just like we're doing now, okay? To the entirety of the argument.
Maybe not the entirety though, because it is quite long.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, essentially, what I'm saying is, because we'll probably revisit this at some point, but
like a dog back to its vomit.
Through it with a fine-tooth fucking comb. That's what we do, and we dissect all of it, right? And then these cunt feminists like this asshole, right? Don't even watch them. They don't even watch them, and they don't actually respond to the entirety. Like, I have never had a feminist take my entire when female privilege backfires video, right, and respond to the entire thing in its entirety, in its full context. No, I have them isolate, right, maybe a minute and a half of that 40-minute video, right, and say, oh my God, she's saying women in the Middle East are privileged and men are oppressed and blah blah blah, and this is what she's and essentially put words in my mouth without actually addressing any of the arguments I actually made to support my position in that video, right? That is what they do, right? They look for whatever they can get you on, whatever sentence fragment they can, why didn't you just keep your knees together, right? And then they fucking pillory you on it. and that is what they do. That is what they are doing here. And then they'll say, oh, but she's cherry picking, evidence from the Middle East. She's cherry picking stuff from Sharia law. She's cherry picking this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, I'm not. You're cherry picking, right? And this is what they do. And then they won't even fucking watch the videos where we respond to them point by fucking excruciating point. Because, oh my god, they're just so awful. I can't even stand listening to more than a minute of them.
Okay, Teal Deer, do you even remember what was said?
Oh
yeah, we don't
about projection and hypocrisy and I don't know.
It's bullshit.
Yeah, like we apparently we skim abstracts and that's pretty much it. And
you just read the headline.
Yes, I know. No,
okay.
we actually go through articles and do.
If this guy really believed that we don't get more than 30 seconds into a video, then why is this question 5 minutes and 40 seconds into this video? We would never get to it.
The length of our response completely disproves this question. Can we move on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Being said, how can you expect to understand or critique feminist sources if you don't even attempt to understand what they're trying to say?
Why?
Okay,
the reason we can refute them is because we understand them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're wrong. Moving on.
To understand what they're trying to say.
Why is trying and failing to debunk a study into sexual assault the #1 priority for a rational thinker now?
Because those studies are being used to eliminate due process protections for men.
Well, we don't try and fail, we try and succeed. We succeed in pointing out why the studies are bullshit and wrong, and then people like you come along and just like, oh no, but you failed because...
Yeah.
You never actually clarify why, or if you do, it tends to come along with something like, oh, but the 1 in 4 is still true because this part of the study... What, you mean the one part wherein one university wherein they found 1 in 4 because they had a 20% sample rate? I would have assumed that you people being social scientists, you're supposed to be aware of this thing called leverage saliency theory. You know, that thing that dictates how likely people are to respond to surveys. Maybe the fact that there's only a 20% response rate or lower in order to garner a 1 in 4 should maybe tell you that the people who are answering that have some very salient reason to want to fill out that study, thus biasing the ever-loving shit out of the result.
Do you remember, like, there was the recent one that had a 19% response rate. They sent out like 800,000 surveys. They had a 19% response rate. It was 27 different universities across the U.S. And they found that there was the 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 or whatever the fuck, right? But there was only one freaking actual figure in that study that could be compared against a known number, and it was the number. Was the percentage of respondents that had been sexually assaulted and also said that they reported it to their school. And those numbers, the reports to the schools, are public information under the Clery Act. They have to be disclosed to the public, right? So that's a known number. And when you actually parse that against the population of university students and you extrapolate it across the university population in general and all of that stuff, right, that number was off by a factor of 9, right? A factor of 9. It was 9 times higher, right? If you extrapolate from the study and say, well, this study is representative of the university population of the United States, and so, yeah, there would have to be 9 times more reports to schools under the Clery Act than actually exist, and that's even assuming that every single one of those reports was a woman who reported a sexual assault. Okay, and then on top of that, even if you look at that, right, even if you factor that in and you assume that the 80% of people who received the survey who didn't fill it out, had not been sexually assaulted in any way whatsoever, you would still be off by a factor of 4.
Okay, and I thought you guys wanted us to address your strongest argument. Is this not, the 1 in 4, is this not one of your strongest arguments for something? I don't know.
It's got to be the most important.
Yeah, it's definitely your most important. So
all right, well, get ready to rage, because this isn't something that just this doesn't exist without the accusations that are veiled underneath. But let's move on. You'll see.
Yeah, just one more. Though.
Does it maybe say something about your priorities? Does it maybe?
It's fine. It's fine. It's
that we want accurate statistics and accurate freaking research. That we
don't want to engage in fear mongering.
Yeah.
College campuses for women. Like that's the. I mean, I guess you just don't care. Like you don't care that you are actually. You could be. Let's keep it ambiguous for a second. That you could be ruining the quality of life for women on campus. You don't care about that. That's not a concern.
Let's make women feel terrified of the world. Like that. That's totally cool. Because
collateral damage.
Yeah, no, it's just like, and if it and honestly, like I was just looking at a Canadian survey of university students that found that there are many more women, female students than male students, who are in treatment for mental health issues, for depression and anxiety and all kinds of things. Do you think that maybe this narrative that you're constantly in danger and you're oppressed and you are under attack all the time and you're never safe might actually, this narrative that you're promoting might actually be part of the reason why women are so much more likely.
Let me use an analogy. Let's imagine this guy is selling a home security system to your aunt. And I've used this analogy before. I think Karen will know it. And he's using all kinds of distorted statistics to make your aunt feel scared of the neighborhood she is in, even though the actual statistics indicate that her neighborhood is pretty free of crime, almost completely free of crime, and yet he's coming around and making your aunt terrified of even stepping outside of her house. And we're saying, hey, wait, those statistics, they don't seem to be accurate, and you're the one who is saying that we are I guess anti-aunt, or that we're against, we're the ones who are harming our aunt. Well, when we question these distorted statistics that are terrifying her.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely beautiful. You and Randomer Cam are beautiful at this type of analogy. And yeah.
No, but he's defending. Well, he is the sleazy salesman oozing into your aunt's house and saying, "Oh yeah, these statistics." And you're the one coming up and saying, "No, this is you're scaring her. This is ridiculous. This is inaccurate." And then you are turning around. You, the sleazy salesman, are turning around and saying that we just hate our aunt because we don't care about her safety, because we're challenging your crappy statistics. Yeah, no, fail. You fail. Okay, are we done here? Because I'm done.
Well, yeah, there's just like a little bit of a punchline at the end of this, and this could be the last. This is the same. Whatever this dude. This dude with the yellow hair.
Asshole. The same asshole.
They're taking away our video games. Look, Anita, I'm sorry, but I can't. We can't actually destroy video games. That doesn't make any sense.
All right, we'll leave it there.
But you could censor
You're not
them.
funny. None of your points are coherent. You're supposed to be the funny one here. You're not. You have no talent. You make no good points. Fucking kill yourself.
Ooh.
And may
or drink bleach.
And may God have mercy on your soul.
And ours as well, because Jesus fucking Christ, 2 hours for 6 minutes.
Jeez, fucking Dio-wrecked.
But we don't actually address any of their best arguments.
No. We just watched the first 15 seconds.
Well, first you have to have good arguments, then you wreck them. There's an order to this stuff. You have to have good arguments first, then you wreck those arguments. They don't have good arguments. They've done 6 minutes. We've gotten through 6 minutes and 15 seconds. No good arguments. None. It's all like this.
But you know what? The fact that we've only done 6 minutes and this is where we're ending is proof that we're not going to address anything else, and it's proof we don't address things in their entirety.
Yes, that's right. We don't even get 30 seconds into it somehow.
We could always revisit this after New York.
We read the title for 2 hours, and then we said, "I can't even. Let's not even bother with this." That's what actually.
Yeah,
happened.
no, I couldn't even watch 1 minute of this. Then I just turned it off.
I can't even. What? I think the last 2 hours have obviously not happened.
No.
Okay.
Shall we get the fuck out of here?
Yeah, let's.
All right.
Let's not even.
No, we're no goodbyes, no nothing. Just going.
Nothing.